Welcome to GoMission, a monthly program on the Generation podcast designed to highlight amazing accounts of gospel advance and equip you to join Jesus in his Go mission.
Welcome once again to our GoMission podcast. I'm Mark Gillmore, and sitting with me here today is a man who's led a ministry now for a number of years called Make a Timothy Today. And it's Brother Bob Landis. And welcome to our GoMission podcast.
Thank you.
Good to have you here with us. And I know you've got a great heart for young people.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
You wouldn't have the ministry that you have if you didn't believe God could touch young people's lives in a significant way. How did God begin to give you that kind of a vision for young people?
I guess that starts back in the early days of my conversion and being discipled by a Christian art teacher. This was back in the 60s. And that man actually discipled me, brought me along in the early years of my life. And he was kind of my Paul in the faith, whereas he saw that, God could use me. And so he gave me opportunities to travel through his, he had a chalk art team that he would take out. And he would let some of us young guys go along, and we would help him, and we would play our instruments and sing. And he would give us opportunities to preach every now and then. And so it was a training preparational type thing that something that you don't normally get in college. It's kind of like you're just learning how to do things from the goodwill of somebody else that sees something in you that you don't even see yourself.
Yeah. So you would have been at what age at that time?
I was at that time. That would have been back. I want to say I was about 14 years old.
Yeah.
And so I got saved when I was 12 in 1965. And so it was at that time that Bill saw me as a young person that God could use. And I was very, very thankful for it.
So you were in your mid-teens, and a man connected to you in that personal way, drew you into his life and his ministry and gave you those kind of opportunities.
It was. I grew up in a Lutheran church, so if it wasn't for the fact that my mother got saved through an Oliver Big Green tent revival meeting, we would have maybe never left the Lutheran church.
Yeah, so God saved you out of that really kind of dead religion and brought you into a relationship with himself, but he also brought you into a relationship with someone who loved you and was going to mentor you.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking, young people, as you're listening, do some of you think of someone who God's brought into your life even now, maybe through the Generation event, through an outreach, maybe there's a local church, maybe there's a youth pastor, and to think about the opportunity, the potential that's in that relationship. And I encourage you, young people, to draw close to whoever God's putting in your life, because out of that will become some amazing life change and opportunity. So God gave you that opportunity, but then you began to turn around and do the same for others. So how did God lead you in that way?
Well, it was a number of years later, and I know that my wife and I had been very actively involved in our local church, and we were asked to take the youth group of our church, and if we would be willing to work with them, and so we agreed to do that. And so in the process of doing all that, we had some training ourselves about being more than just going out and getting involved, but actually learning how you could learn the Bible, and then how you could take the Bible and apply it to your life, and how you could see God work in your own life through the applications that are in the Bible.
That's powerful.
And so as a result of that, we decided to go ahead and we had some goals. It was goal-oriented, so we decided to take some mission trips. And that was in the early years. This would have been back in the 90s, early, mid-90s. And as we began to take some mission trips out, the young people had to achieve certain things to qualify to go. So we just didn't throw the fleece out and say, come on, let's go, you go with us, etc., whatever. They had to do certain things. They had a book that they had to complete, so many verses out of the Bible they were memorizing. So we were trying to get them involved through the scriptures to get them to a point to where they felt like they could be used in an effective way. And so we started doing that. And after the first 3 years of doing that, we began to realize that, we could take this to another level, but we didn't know exactly how to do that. And so I was given some advice about the possibility of going and putting something that we were wanting to do as far as getting young people from different churches that would be interested in doing missions, and how could we make this work. And so what we did was we went ahead and we started getting things put together. We took our first 3 teams out. And then after we had done that, we had some young people that it looked like God was directing them to go to Christian college someplace. And so, we had talked to a couple different people about, we thought it would be great if we could start this in a little bit larger way. And so we were advised to possibly put what we were wanting to do underneath a mission board. And of course, we tried to do this. We actually went to a couple different mission boards, and everyone was real excited about this 28 years ago. But they were saying that underneath their mission board, they really didn't have anything set up at the time to do what we were wanting to do, which was more in the line of youth ministries. Mm-hmm. And so we were given advice underneath Baptist World Missions a number of years ago from Dr. Fred Mortz and Dr. Jack McClanahan. They said, you need to go ahead and start your own board, because that'll be something that you can go ahead and everything can be earmarked underneath what you're wanting to do. And that way you're not under the guidelines of a mission board that they're looking at overseas missions. They're looking at the possibility of long-term. And, of course, you're doing short-term mission trips, so that doesn't fall under those guidelines. So that's how we actually started this. And so my wife and I prayed about this. We were told to come home and write a number of pastors, men that are in the ministry, and ask them if they would be willing to serve as an accountability board to start our own board that we could have something that would be effective. And so we wrote a number of letters. We had a number of pastors that said, we would love to serve on this board that you're wanting to start. And so that's how it all started off back in 1997. I actually met with Dr. Bob Jones III in his office in 1997. And I told him exactly what we were looking at wanting to do. And he gave me some unbelievable advice. And so we followed that, and we had no idea what God was going to do other than the fact that we knew that God was going to be doing something.
And really, that was a big step of faith, wasn't it?
Well, it was.
Step out where you'd never been before, but you had a vision in front of you. And folks encourage you to follow that vision.
Yeah.
And the challenges are there, but I love that you stepped out into that vision. And now your ministry is called Make a Timothy Today.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Why did you call it that? Make a Timothy Today.
That's interesting. I've had a number of people said, did you name the ministry? I said, no, as a matter of fact, I didn't. I said our ministry was actually named by an Awana missionary from the state of South Carolina. Mm. And he's the one that actually said, why don't you consider MTT, Make a Timothy Today. And so, and we thought, that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yes.
We're trying to produce a generation of Timothies that will go out and will carry the gospel and do what needs to be done.
Yes.
To whatever capacity, evangelism, pastorate, missionaries abroad, whatever. And so, and one of the scriptures that we based that on was that of 2 Timothy 2:2, that says, "And the things that thou hast heard of me amongst many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others." And so, and we realized that was exactly what we were wanting to do. our mission teams are much different than many other mission teams that go everywhere.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that. How are your mission teams different? I know you've got a boot camp, then you've got your trip. So explain how that works.
Okay, everyone that is accepted, everyone goes through an application process, and we have approvals, pastors, several references, and once they are accepted onto a team, then they are told a certain time that they will report for boot camp training, which basically is going to be preparing them for everything that we're going to be doing while we're on the mission field. Now, I coordinate everything with the missionaries that I know in different countries around the world. So when we go there, it's not a matter of showing up and say, hey, what would you like us to do? Because we already know what we are planning on doing with that particular missionary.
Yeah, right.
Or pastor.
Right. So you might hear, as a young person, hear boot camp and think, oh, wow, they're going to just put me through the paces. But what's so exciting, that's not about it. Yes, you're going to go through the paces, but you're going to be equipped so that when you show up on the field, you will have practiced what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. You'll actually know what you're going to speak. And because you've been equipped, you'll be the one doing the ministry.
Exactly. And that's what's unique about this.
Yes.
Because I have young men that are showing up, they're getting opportunities to preach the gospel. Sometimes they're preaching the gospel in different languages. It's being translated. However, everyone learns their testimony in the language. So we actually have people that come in and do linguistics with us. And the young people are learning how to give their testimony in Portuguese, Spanish, German, perhaps wherever we're going. And some languages are quite difficult.
Yeah, that is awesome. Some of them, would have to be written out phonetically, and you might be familiar with, if it's Spanish or Portuguese, it's a little more common. But if you're learning phonetically some other Asian language,
it's not easy.
It's not, but it's cool. I mean, to me, I'm not just going to go watch another country. I'm going to go engage another culture, and I'm going to communicate in this way.
What's really nice about this, and this gives you an example. In 1999, I took our very first team that I had ever taken out overseas, and that was to Romania. Mm. And it was a big team. I don't recommend big teams unless you're equipped to do that. Yeah. But we had 22 on our team. And so we ended up in Alba Iulia, Romania. And our team had really put a lot of effort in. We were fortunate to have a Romanian couple that went with us, but put a lot of effort into learning testimonies. Just one example of this one young lady, she's about 42 years old now. However, we ran onto her probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and her father's pastoring a church out in Utah. Hmm. And this young lady, when we got a chance to chat a little bit, she said, she says, I still remember my testimony in Romanian. And she began to give me her testimony. And now this is after 20-some years.
Yes.
And so, but it was so effective. And so, it's just a lot of effort that has to be put into this. So it's more than just pay the money and go someplace and get involved. It's learning how to be effective as a witness for Christ. You're a missionary, and you're going to give the gospel in whatever way you possibly can. And so, and we know for a fact how this has had a long-reaching effect on people everywhere, all over the world.
Who were just under the ministry of these young people.
Yes, yeah.
And then you've participated. Your story puts my mind back to a trip I took in 1989 down to Brazil. And literally there was a phrase I learned to stand on the street corner that would say, Aqui está convite para você, which here's an invitation for you. Yeah. And it's still in my brain from that trip. But, if I had learned more than that, which I didn't, what if I'd learned to give my testimony in Portuguese? What if I'd learned a little bit more that could have stuck with me? But even the little I did is with me. So tell me then about these young people who are trained ahead of time, in using the language. They're not going to go just kind of watching the professionals do it.
Yeah.
They're not going to just watch the missionary or the professional, world traveler. They're going to do the ministry. How has this changed their lives?
Well, I think because it's put a lot of these young people in a position of leadership that they perhaps would never, ever had visioned themselves to be in. And so, obviously, when you go to college, you have a whole new system of life that's being dumped on you, and you're learning so many different things. But when you're going to a different country, you're learning that you have to learn how to adapt into where you're going. And so, and to adapt means to perhaps learn how to do some things that perhaps is way outside of your normal realm of living. And and we know that it has had an effect on a lot of the young people, because after being there and being involved with this, many times we would have our share time at night. And we would share about, what is God teaching you? What have you learned? And the comments of, how frail I am, and like, it's hard to believe that God can use something as simplistic as this, but yet use it in my life. And how I'm able to be effective for Christ. And what you learn in the early stages of your life, you'll never forget.
Yeah.
It'll stay with you. And I'm very, very thankful for a man that saw something in me that I had no idea back in the 60s of where I would be. I never thought that I would be doing what I'm doing right now. But sometimes people see things in you and give you opportunities to do things that you don't even know you can do yourself.
Yeah. There's that training method that leads you from modeling, watch someone, to assisting, to actually doing it yourself, and now you're launched into doing it, and that pattern is what you're really employing.
That's one of the things we're doing.
Yes.
I mean, because when we go out, our ministry has to deal a lot with youth ministries. Everything from doing vacation Bible schools to running youth rallies and ministering on the streets. Lots of times we've just set up on the street and it played hand chimes. And perhaps maybe whilst hand chimes were being played, we had one or two others that were going out and they're passing out tracts or invitational type things, inviting people to come in for a special meeting or something we were going to have. And so the young people get a chance to get a lot of hands-on and plus communication.
Yeah, communication. So, I'm sure your team is willing to do anything that they're asked to do.
Yeah. But
you're not going just to build a roof or dig a well. You're actually engaging gospel ministry. You're communicating your testimony, and like you said, the vacation Bible school setting, the youth ministry.
Well, probably one of the few organizations that actually have vacation Bible school for teenagers. When we have a VBS, I've had as many as 40 and 50 teenagers show up for vacation Bible school. And people say, well, are they helping? No, they're showing up to participate. Now, we gear it different because they are teens.
Right.
And so we're not going to have it on the same level as you would for the primary, pre-primary, or juniors. However, it's another aspect of outreach ministry. And when you can get some young people that are focused of being able to say, this is a group that I want to be able to have an impact on, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yes.
And we have found this out. As a matter of fact, even over the years, there are young people that have got saved at a vacation Bible school who was a teenager and then God ended up moving them and putting them in a position to where they have now traveled with MTT, and they're going around the world and they're giving the gospel. So that whole process of multiplication starts over and over and over again.
So you're what age of young people are typical in joining you on your trips?
Well, we usually take, they have to be age of 15 years of age and above. There are some ramifications for that because of getting young people, and parents have to sign to allow them to be able to go out of the country, et cetera. And so there's a lot more detail that has to be taken care of. But we're not just looking for warm bodies. I'm looking for somebody that has a heart to want to serve God somehow.
Yes. So you'll take someone as young as 15, which in my opinion is kind of young for a team member, but then you'll also take college students who
Yeah.
are often a part of your trips.
Yeah,
as well.
I had it this past summer. I
Yes.
mean, it's nothing uncommon to have high school students.
Yes.
Sophomores,
Where
juniors.
did you go? Where did you go this past summer? What was your trip? 'Cause-
This past summer we took a trip to Singapore and Malaysia, and I did not realize at the time that we were going to be incorporating another country during that time. But we actually left and we went over to Singapore and then drove on up into Malaysia. We were in Kulang, which is a very, very heavy Muslim country.
area.
And so, but there is a pastor that's up there that has been in that part of the world over there for about 35, 40 years. And so, and he had started the little church up in that area. So we went in and we were doing a vacation Bible school with some children that could not speak English. And so we were in a situation where there's a lot of translation work and things like that going on, but we were teaching the Bible lessons and everything else, and everything was being translated into Malay. And there was a couple different cases where we had Mandarin that it was being translated in. It was being translated in Malay. And so you have kids that are coming from different backgrounds. But we had a chance. It was great.
That's an incredible, bold gospel adventure.
Yeah.
Now, what other places are typical for you to travel to?
Well, we were there. We came home after about 5 weeks, 6 weeks, I think we were over there. Then we ended up coming back, and then we took another team, and it went up to Eastern Canada.
Okay.
And so I don't know if you're familiar with that part of the world or not, but there are a lot of missionaries up there. We actually have some supporting churches up in that area as well. So we took a team there with the intentions of doing some vacation Bible schools. We were doing youth ministry outreach. And so, and then we were just being able to do special services in churches.
What other countries? I know New Zealand.
Oh, yeah, we're going to be going to New Zealand this summer. Yes. And looking forward to being in New Zealand.
Africa? Anything?
Africa, yeah. We've been in Ghana, West Africa. Yes. I have two of my Timothies that are pastoring churches and they're planting churches in Ghana, West Africa.
In Ghana. Yep.
And so we have been to places over in Europe, Romania, and we've been to England, Scotland, Ireland. We traveled in New Zealand. We've been to the most southern part of the world, Invercargill, and that is the most southern part of
inhabited
of the South Island. Yeah. You say, are there people that live down there? A few. So, but yeah, it's
how many trips normally in the course of a year?
We usually take about 3 trips.
Okay.
Our summer trips are usually our teams are a little bit longer because we spend anywhere from 4 to 6, sometimes as much as 7 weeks with the team.
Nice.
And so we usually have 2 of those. We do it during the summertime and Christmas because that's when college students, high school students are going to be free.
As you think of those who've gone through what your opportunity has, can you see that there are folks out even in the mission field presently in their adult life, in their ministry life, that were touched by what they experienced on trips?
Let me give you an example of one. In 2002, 2003, I had a young man that he was married, had 2 little girls, and he was attending Ambassador Baptist College. He was there because he had heard a missions presentation from a missionary from New Zealand. And he really felt like, that sounds like a really needy place of the world to go to. And so he packed up everything, his family, went to the college, and I met him during a time that we were there recruiting, Missions Emphasis Week, and he, as soon as he saw my display and saw I was going to New Zealand, he kind of lit up. He said, this is what I'm thinking about, the possibility of maybe where I may end up going. And so Lewis ended up applying. He traveled with me. His wife and their children, they were all from up around Maryland, so they all went back to Maryland during the Christmas holiday break, but he ended up going down with me. I think what probably changed Lewis's whole mindset was I was holding some meetings in a little town called Turangi, and pretty heavy, moldy It's an ethnic group of people there that lived in that area. But we were heading down for a service, and as we were leaving Telpo and going down that way, they ended up there was an accident in that little town of Turangi, and so they had to redirect the traffic.
Yes.
And so our van, we decided to go in a different route so that we could get to the church we were going to. And in the process of going there, we noticed that there was ambulance and police cars and everything everywhere. And Lewis said to me, he said, "Stop." He said, "Stop." He said, "Hold on a moment." And so we pulled off, and Lewis jumped out of the van, and he ran over to where there was this man on the ground. And this man was obviously dying. You could tell that he was choking in his own blood. But Lewis went ahead, and he tried to give him the gospel and tell him that he needed to be saved, and told him what he needed to do to be able to have eternal life. But right there on the ground, this man died in Lewis's arms.
Yes.
And right then and there,
Yeah.
I think that's what sealed it for Lewis.
Yes.
To realize these people are dying. Somebody's got to take the gospel to them.
Yes.
And that changed. Now, this missionary I'm telling you about is still in New Zealand today.
That's right.
I
Amen.
plan on working with him this summer. And he's a soul winner. He wants to see people come to Christ.
God will literally direct circumstances to give someone the experience they need that will change their life and perhaps make clear a call.
Exactly.
And I've seen, even in my own life, some folks will say, a missions trip, it's just a trip. People kind of live in a bubble for a couple of weeks, and then they return back to life, and it's just normal, and it doesn't really change their lives. It's just kind of a parentheses that ends up being almost a false experience. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, it's like anything else. There's a lot of things that happen in our life that change our whole dimension on how we think about what we think.
Yes.
And God has a way of getting our attention, perhaps in ways that we would never, want to experience, but we do experience them. And there are a lot of people that are serving on the mission field today, and it was more because of just perhaps a presentation that they heard, but it was something that God literally put some hands on there, and it directed him in a way.
I'm thinking of a young man, even right here in this week as we're recording this, who is on his way to a Central African country. And a couple years ago, I helped connect him to kind of that region, and he visited it. And really, that taste, that moment, is still guiding and directing his life. Kind of like Jesus, who said, "Come, follow me. I'll make you fishers of men." And he took them from village to village, and they got a taste. And all those 12 apostles, those 11 apostles, they were determined, we're leaving Jerusalem. We're not staying. And history is that after about 12 years there in the book of Acts, they were dispersed all over.
There's one thing, and I've mentioned this before. The reason why we have the gospel ourselves today is because there were a few men that heard Jesus command them to take the gospel into all the world. And because those men took serious that very command that Jesus said, you and I have salvation today, because it was handed down and handed down and handed down. And sooner or later it came 360 degree full circle. It came to us at a specific time. And it's because those men took serious the command that Jesus told them to go into all the world.
The gospel begins with go.
Amen.
And
it does.
And we're saved because someone obeyed that command. Amen. Well, I just am thrilled with the vision. And in the program notes for this podcast, you'll be able to find a link to Brother Landis's ministry, Make a Timothy Today. And I want to invite those of you listening, click into that website. And if God directs some of you to join Brother Landis on a trip, get on board. I wholeheartedly recommend this man and his ministry, the opportunity. Maybe there'll be some other thing you're connecting. Maybe your church is putting together a trip. Maybe you're your own youth pastor. Maybe you hear about a The Generation trip, or I lead trips myself. And be led by the Spirit, but jump on board, and it'll really change your life. So Brother Landis, thank you for what you've shared. Remember, the only way to stay at peace in a world of turmoil and uncertainty is to stay on mission with Jesus in his GoMission.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Generation Podcast. If you've been blessed or helped in any way by this episode or any other episodes, please consider sharing what God has done in your life. Your testimony could be exactly what someone else needs to take their own step out of the boat. To share your testimony, please visit thegeneration.org/testimony. That's THEEgeneration.org/testimony.